It began with silence. No explosions. No alarms, no warning, just silence. Commander Chris Blackwood stood alone on the observation deck of Aegis Prime, Earth's final defense outpost. In front of him, the stars stretched endlessly, peaceful, calm, too calm. Then he saw it. A shadow, slow, massive, moving against the stars like a dark god. An alien warship. Not one of the friendly ones. Not a visitor, not a trader. This ship didn't come to talk. It came to end the human race. Chris didn't speak. He simply turned and walked to the command center. As the doors slid open, his team looked up, nervous, confused. Most of them were young, fresh from training. He cleared his throat. Prepare for war. Across the solar system, humanity had always joked about aliens. Some hoped for friendship, others feared invasion. No one expected the Zarkalians. They were quiet watchers. Strange, snake-like creatures with cold logic and no mercy. The kind of empire that never attacked first, unless it was sure it would win. Now, they were sure. Too sure. Chris looked at the hologram of the alien ship. It was 3 times the size of Earth's biggest carrier. Energy levels rising. "Lieutenant Mira," he said. "How long until it reaches range?" 2 minutes, sir. Arm all weapons. Alert the fleet. Bring all satellites online." Mira hesitated. "Sir, are we really going to fight them?" Chris's voice was low. "We don't get to choose." On board the alien ship, General Velzor watched Earth with a bored expression. He had seen hundreds of planets fall, but none of them were like Earth. "They look weak." "Threx," his assistant said. Velzor smiled with his sharp fangs. "Then they won't mind being erased." At Aegis Prime, the attack began. No message. No warning. Just a blinding beam of light that sliced through a satellite, sending burning metal into Earth's orbit. The crew screamed. Sparks flew. One officer was thrown from his chair. Chris stood firm. "They fired first," Mira whispered. Chris turned to his crew. "That was their biggest mistake." He tapped the console. A message blinked red. Omega Protocol activated. Dozens of hidden defense drones powered up around the planet. Missile silos opened. Submarines surfaced. The whole of Earth woke up. Back on the Zarkalian ship, Velzor frowned. "They respond quickly," Threx hissed. "Primitive instinct." Velzor's smile faded. "No, that was discipline." Fighter jets screamed across the sky. Lasers danced in orbit. Space lit up with fire and death. Earth was bleeding, but not broken. Chris led the defense with brutal calm. Even when the shields dropped. Even when half their fleet was gone. "Launch the core cannon," he ordered. Mira gasped. "That's a last resort." "It could kill us too." Chris stared at the alien ship through the burning glass. "They came to kill us," he said. "Let's show them how humans die." In the Zarkalian control room, lights flashed red. Unknown weapon charging. Velzor snarled. "Retreat!" Too late. A blinding white beam tore through the stars. A direct hit to the alien warship's power core. The explosion turned night into day. 2 ships were gone in a second. Silence returned, just like before. But among the drifting wreckage, a life pod blinked. Inside was Commander Chris Blackwood, bleeding, breathing, alive, eyes full of rage. The war had just started, and humans were not done fighting. Commander Chris Blackwood woke up in a dream, or at least that's what it felt like. Soft purple light flickered above him. Strange symbols blinked on glass walls. The air smelled like burnt metal and something sweet. This wasn't Earth. It wasn't Aegis Prime either. This was alien. His body ached. Burns on his arms. Blood dried on his jaw. But he was alive. Somehow. Floating in a medical chamber surrounded by quiet machines. A soft voice spoke. "You should not be awake." Chris turned sharply. A woman stood near the console, tall, violet skin that shimmered, long white hair tied back. Sharp blue eyes that seemed too human for an alien. She wore a dark brown research coat and looked half curious, half annoyed. "Where am I?" Chris asked, his voice hoarse. The woman tilted her head. "Galactic Council Recovery Station, Sector 12. You were found drifting in orbit." "Near wreckage." Her voice hesitated at the last word. "Wreckage. The explosion." "The Zarkalian ship, I remember," Chris muttered. "I fired the fusion cannon. Took us both out." The alien woman nodded. A bold move, reckless, but effective. Chris sat up, wincing in pain. Who are you? Dr. Leona Chiara, lead xenobiologist. I was assigned to monitor your recovery. Chris narrowed his eyes. Monitor, or study? Leona smiled faintly. A bit of both, but something strange was already happening. Chris's heart was beating faster, but not from pain. His skin tingled. His head felt light, and when he looked at Leona, he could feel something. A calm curiosity, a soft hum. It wasn't his own emotion. It was hers. Across the room, Leona frowned. She stepped closer and checked a scanner. Her fingers moved fast. Her smile faded. This can't be right. Chris asked, "What is it?" She looked up at him a little too long. There's a signal between us. A biological link, I think. The healing pod scanned me while repairing you. And? Leona hesitated. It used my DNA, my neural map, to restore yours. Chris blinked. Wait, you're saying I've been rebuilt using you? Yes, she said. And that's not all. Your brain, your neurons, they're syncing with mine. Chris stood up slowly. The room spun. Then he heard it, her voice, but not out loud. Inside his mind. You're hearing this, aren't you? Holy shit, he replied, mentally. They stared at each other in stunned silence. This wasn't just healing, it was bonding. Chris looked at the scanner. What does this mean? Is it permanent? I don't know, Leona admitted. This has never happened before. Not between human and thy? My species, she said. We don't share minds, not even with our own kind. This is dangerous, Chris smirked. Kinda intimate, too. Leona's cheeks turned a darker shade of violet. She looked away, but Chris could still feel it, the warmth in her chest, the embarrassment, and something else, attraction. Just then, the door opened with a sharp hiss. Council Specialist Thorne entered. Tall, pale, and human, but colder than any alien Chris had met. 2 Arcturian guards followed, silent and watching. Commander Blackwood, Thorne said flatly. You're awake. Chris stood tall. You're not here to offer coffee, are you? No. I'm here to ask why a human has survived an alien weapon, recovered with alien help, and now shares illegal neural frequencies with a council scientist. Leona stepped forward. It wasn't intentional. Thorne raised a hand. Save it. The council doesn't allow cross-species mental bonding. It's dangerous, unstable. Chris felt the anger rising inside him. I didn't ask for this. Thorne's eyes narrowed. And yet here we are. As the council left, Chris turned to Leona. They're going to lock me up, aren't they? Leona nodded slowly. Or worse, Chris sighed. Well, guess we better figure out what this bond really means. He looked at her again, and for the first time since the war began, he didn't feel alone. It started with silence, again. But this silence felt different. It wasn't peaceful. It was watching. Commander Chris Blackwood sat in a clean, cold meeting room deep inside the Galactic Council station. A single light shone above him. No windows, no sound, only the door. It had been closed for 17 minutes. They were making him wait, testing him. He leaned back in the metal chair, feeling every bruise from the recent war. His chest still ached. His memory was foggy, but one thing was crystal clear. They knew. Someone had found the scans. The frequencies. The bond between him and Dr. Leona Chiara. The door finally slid open. 3 figures entered. A pale, sharp-eyed human named Specialist Thorne, a 4-eyed Arcturian guard, and a tall insectoid diplomat from the Solarian species, clicking softly as it moved. No greetings. No small talk. Thorne sat across from him and tapped on a glowing datapad. Commander Blackwood, he said slowly. Let's talk about what exactly happened. After the explosion, Chris said nothing. Thorne continued, his voice cold. Your escape pod was found near alien wreckage. Your injuries were repaired using non-human methods. And now you're showing unusual neural activity. He looked up. Do you have any idea what that means? Chris tilted his head. I survived. That's what it means. Thorne smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. No, Commander. It means you are now a security risk. Meanwhile, down the corridor, Leona Chiara sat in a different room, surrounded by alien scientists, all looking at her like she was broken tech. You bonded with a human? one of them asked. No, she replied sharply. The device did. You allowed it to continue? I didn't understand what was happening at first, she said. And now? It's beyond control. They all exchanged looks. Another alien spoke, voice buzzing. The Council forbids interspecies neural syncing. You know that. Leona's fists clenched in her lap. I didn't choose this, but now it's real. And he's not dangerous. You can't be sure, the Solarian hissed. Leona paused, but she was sure. In her mind, even now she could feel Chris, angry, controlled, focused, but also worried about her. I'm fine, she whispered. Inside, Chris heard her. They're trying to pin this on me, he thought back. Their bond was still working, and even across walls. That's what scared the Council the most. Back in Chris's room, Thorn leaned forward. I know you're hiding something. I want to know what, Chris smiled. You can want a lot of things. Thorn's face turned red. Tell me what the bond does, Chris replied quietly. It made me understand her. That's all, Thorn scoffed. Understand? You're sharing thoughts, Blackwood, emotions, possibly even skills, he stood. The Council doesn't want understanding. It wants control. Later that day, the Council Assembly was called All Ambassadors, all species, and in the center of it all stood Chris and Leona, side by side, gasps, whispers, eyes watching, some with disgust, some with fear, some with curiosity. Specialist Thorn stepped forward. Members of the Council, I present to you proof that the bonding device has crossed its limits. A human and a thy connected mentally, emotionally, possibly permanently. A screen lit up. Brain scans, neural frequencies, shared thoughts. A pattern. Perfect sync. Unacceptable, a blue-skinned ambassador hissed. Blasphemy, another shouted. But Leona raised her voice. This was not forced, not planned, not created by science alone. She looked at Chris. It grew from survival and trust. Chris stepped forward. You're afraid of what humans can become. But maybe this bond shows what we're ready for. A long silence followed. Then the votes began. Some wanted to quarantine them. Some wanted to study them. But one old alien, tall, ancient, with skin like stone, stood and said, if we fear connection, then we never deserve peace in the first place. The final decision? Postponed. The Council wasn't ready to decide, but they were watching now, and that was dangerous. As Chris and Leona returned to their quarters, she looked at him with tired eyes. They don't trust us. Chris nodded. Then we give them a reason to. But what if they try to separate us? Chris placed a hand on her cheek gently. They'll have to kill me first. Through the bond, she felt his truth, and threw her hand on his chest. He felt hers. Chris Blackwood was dreaming in alien code, not sounds, not words, symbols, glowing, floating, moving like they were alive. He woke up in a cold sweat. The symbols still flashed behind his eyes. He looked over at Leona, asleep beside him on the small bed. Her violet skin shimmered softly in the dim light. Her breathing was calm, peaceful, but inside his head. Her thoughts were not. She was dreaming too, and he could feel it. Fear, worry, equations, data, the device. He sat up, heart pounding. The bond wasn't just emotional anymore. It was becoming intellectual. He now understood things he'd never studied. Alien math, medical codes, technology that should take decades to learn, now just lived in his brain. And Leona? She had started speaking Earth combat tactics in her sleep. They were becoming each other's minds, and that meant one thing. The device wasn't finished. The next morning, in the lab, Leona confirmed it. This is more than a neural bond, she said. Scrolling through data. This is transformation. Chris watched her nervously. What kind of transformation? Leona bit her lip. Our DNA is syncing, bit by bit. Our cells are changing, rewriting. Chris raised an eyebrow. So I'm becoming part thee? Leona nodded. And I'm becoming a little human. Chris rubbed his face. What kind of device does that? Leona walked over to the ancient console. She tapped on the alien screen, revealing deep layers of coding, security locks, and hidden data strings. I've never seen this level of encryption before. Not even the Council uses this format. Then who built it? Chris asked. Leona hesitated. Come with me. They entered the sealed vault below the lab, a place even council guards weren't allowed. Inside, in a tall glass chamber, stood a second device, dusty, cracked, and glowing faint blue. "This is the original," Leona whispered. "The prototype found on a dead moon, thousands of years old. Before the council even existed." Chris stepped closer. "Wait, you're telling me this isn't council tech?" Leona nodded. "They've been lying. The council didn't invent it. They found it. And they've been trying to recreate it ever since." Chris stared at the strange shape. Part machine, part organism. "It's alive," he said. Leona's voice dropped to a whisper. "And I think it was designed to create perfect understanding between species." Total connection. Chris's hands curled into fists. They didn't want to use it for peace. They wanted to weaponize it. Leona looked at him, sadness in her eyes. "They failed with dozens of trials. But somehow, you and we activated it by accident," Chris finished. "But we're the only success." They stood in silence. Then Chris asked, "What happens if they find out the truth?" Leona didn't answer, because the truth was worse than anything they had guessed. At that moment, back in the council tower, Specialist Thorne received a secret transmission. It was an encrypted message from a hidden lab. It read, "Subject A and Subject T, neural bond stable. Phase 2 beginning. Brainwave integration now 67%. Recommendation, immediate containment." Thorne smiled. He had waited years for this. Now, it was time. Back in the vault, Leona looked at Chris. "There's one more thing," she said. She pulled up a hologram. It showed the future timeline of the device's effect. At 100% sync, two things would happen. Full knowledge transfer, permanent psychic link, even across light years. But below that, a third line appeared. Faint, red, unknown side effect. Biological convergence. Chris frowned. "What's that mean?" Leona's voice was barely a whisper. "I think it means we might not stay human or die for long." Chris took a slow breath. "So, we either hide forever, or run, or change the galaxy." Leona met his eyes. "I say we make them see what we really are." The first person to betray them was human. It happened at exactly 0417, galactic time. Chris Blackwood woke to the sound of boots. He didn't even have time to grab his shirt. 6 armored soldiers kicked in the door to his council quarters. Their rifles aimed at his chest. "Commander Blackwood, by council order, you are under containment." From the next room, Dr. Leona Chiara ran out, wearing only her lab robe. "No." "You can't take him," she shouted, eyes wide. One soldier stepped forward. "Dr. Chiara, step aside. This does not concern you." Chris raised his hands slowly, his voice calm. "Why now?" What changed? A familiar voice answered from behind the soldiers. Specialist Thorne. He entered slowly, smiling like a man who finally got what he wanted. "You changed, Commander," he said coldly, "and we can't let that spread." Inside Chris's mind, Leona's thoughts hit him like lightning. "They're going to separate us. They'll study you. Cut into your brain. Break the bond." He looked at her. No words. Just one thought back. Run. But she didn't. She stepped between the soldiers and Chris, eyes blazing. "You'll have to shoot me first." The soldiers hesitated. They weren't trained to fire on council scientists, especially not ones glowing with unstable alien biosignals. Thorne raised a hand. "Enough. Bring them both." Then everything went wrong. The bond snapped, not broke, snapped open. Chris felt Leona's fear, her adrenaline, her knowledge of the room, the angles, the pressure points, and she felt his combat instincts. Time slowed. Chris ducked under the first soldier's rifle, punched his gut, grabbed the weapon. Leona kicked the second soldier's knee, precise, brutal. Perfect. Within 12 seconds, 4 guards were down. Thorne screamed, "Stun them!" But the last 2 soldiers were already retreating, eyes wide, scared, because something strange was happening. Chris and Leona were moving like one being. They didn't stop to explain. They ran through quiet corridors, through flashing alarms. Leona led them down into the unauthorized zones where the HFY Council kept its secrets, where no one would look for them, where the cameras didn't work. In the elevator, Chris was bleeding from his arm. Leona pressed her hand to it. Warmth spread. The wound began to close. "I didn't know I could do that," she whispered. Chris stared at her. "Me neither." They said nothing more, but in the silence, they felt everything. At the bottom level, behind a sealed vault, lay the original device, still humming. "Still alive." Leona touched the glass. "This was never about peace," she said. "They were building control." Chris stepped beside her. "But maybe we can finish what it started." Suddenly, lights above them turned red. A robotic voice echoed, "Containment breach." "Lockdown activated." Chris turned to Leona. "Options?" She smiled faintly. "One." She pressed her hand to the console. "I've been building something," she said. "A failsafe. A way out." Behind the vault, a small ship revealed itself, old, stolen tech. "But fast." Leona looked at him. "Are you ready to run?" Chris grabbed her hand. "No, I'm ready to fight." As the ship launched from the underground hangar, alarms screamed across the council station. Inside the ship, Chris and Leona sat in silence, exhausted, hurt, but free. And in that silence, a new thought came from Leona. "We escaped. But now the whole galaxy is watching." Chris thought back. "Then let them watch. We're done hiding." The sky on Ralvos 3 never slept. Even at night, the air shimmered with strange green lightning. The planet was wild, untamed, full of ancient tech ruins and poisonous winds. Perfect place to hide from the council, or die trying. Chris Blackwood stood at the edge of a broken cliff, his eyes on the stars. He could feel them watching. Somewhere up there, ships, soldiers, scanners, all hunting him and Leona like prey. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was changing, and so was she. Inside the crashed ship, Dr. Leona Chiara gripped the lab table with shaking hands. Her skin glowed faint blue, not violet. Her heartbeat was doubled. Her mind buzzed with thoughts, half her own, half Chris's. Her voice trembled. "It's happening, Chris." 90% sync. We're almost... 1. Chris entered, sweat on his brow. His movements were sharper, faster. His senses, unhuman. "I feel everything," he whispered. "You, me, even the planet." Leona looked up at him, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. The device was never just a tool. It was evolution, a shortcut. "And now?" he asked. "Now it's a weapon," she said. "And we're what it created." Suddenly, boom. The ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lights flickered. An alarm screamed across the ship. They'd found them. Above the ruined valley, 3 council warships descended. Drop pods exploded through the atmosphere. Armored soldiers poured out. Heavy guns. Exosuits, neural jammers, and leading them, Specialist Thorne. He stepped onto the cracked ground like a man arriving to clean up a mess. He spoke into his comms. "Scan the ruins. Kill the human. Take the doctor alive. Bond or no bond, we end this today." Inside the wreckage, Chris checked his rifle. Ancient tech. Low ammo. He looked at Leona. "If I fall, you run. If you fall," she said softly, "I fall with you." Their hands touched, and the bond flared like a living fire. Suddenly their thoughts merged. No voices. No words. Just unity, fear, pain, instincts, memories, shared in perfect harmony. The final lock on the bond snapped open, and with it, something ancient awakened. Their skin shifted. Their eyes glowed. Their bodies pulsed with energy, neither human nor alien. They weren't 2 beings anymore. They were something new. The soldiers breached the door. Chris and Leona turned together, moving as one, faster than the eye could follow. Chris grabbed a soldier's weapon, disarming him mid-air. Leona launched a pulse of bioenergy that threw 2 attackers across the wall. Another soldier fired, but the bullet stopped. Mid-air, floated, dropped. Chris turned his head slowly. "You messed with the wrong species." Outside, Thorne watched his squad fail. Rage twisted his face. He activated his override beacon. Initiate orbital strike. The ships above locked onto the crash site. Countdown began. "Done." Chris felt it through the air. "They're going to destroy the entire valley," Leona nodded. "Unless we shut it down from orbit. But we'd have to reach the beacon. Then, let's fly." Chris raised an eyebrow. We can't. She grabbed his hand, and their bond lifted them off the ground. Gravity broke. They shot upward like light, toward the warships above. They were no longer just Chris and Leona. They were more. Above the burning skies of Ralvos 3, as the warships prepared to fire, a strange light appeared between them. Not from a machine, not from any weapon. From them. From the bond. Their bodies glowed with a soft, pulsing energy, white and violet blended. Their eyes held starlight. Their thoughts no longer needed words. Their minds were one. Even the machines around them reacted. Lights flickered, steel bent, gravity weakened. They weren't just bonded. They were becoming the device. On the bridge of the Council flagship, Specialist Thorne stared in horror. Impossible, he whispered. No organism should survive this kind of fusion. But the readings were clear. 2 minds. 1 signal, 2 bodies. 1 force, a perfect merge, and it was spreading. In the orbit above Ralvos 3, Leona and Chris now floated before the warships, unprotected. Glowing like twin stars, they raised their hands together, and the firing systems of all 3 ships shut down. No explosion. No blast, just silence, and complete system failure. The commanders on board shouted. Tried to override. Nothing worked. Chris and Leona were now connected to every system. Biologically, mentally, energetically. The bond had reached its final form. Back on the ground, the remaining soldiers dropped their weapons. Not by command, but because something inside them told them to stop. Peace washed over them like a quiet wave. Not forced. Felt. Leona turned to Chris in mid-air, their bodies still glowing. The bond is now linked to others. Chris nodded. We can send peace. Or war, influence minds, change entire civilizations. But should we? She asked. Then a new message appeared in their shared vision, one that had never shown before, on a glowing interface, in alien language and English, phase complete. Last directive, choose. 2 options. Reproduce the device, galaxy-wide link. Destroy the device, end the experiment. Leona's voice trembled through the bond. If we share this, there may never be secrets again, Chris responded quietly. But if we destroy it, the galaxy goes back to fear, division. They floated in silence, the whole galaxy waiting, watching. Then Chris smiled. Let's do what humans do best. What's that? Leona asked. Take the risk and hope for the best. They reached forward and pressed both buttons. The device didn't explode. It transformed, shattered, reformed, melted into light, and that light flowed out across space faster than ships, faster than data, into minds, into hearts. Only one message echoed inside every sentient species. Understand one another. Back on the Council station weeks later, the votes were finished. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council voted to recognize human Thri, bonding as a legal unity. They had no choice. The evidence was everywhere. People were changing, connections forming, old hatred fading. The bond had begun to rewrite. Everything. Chris and Leona stood on the new Human-Aliens Peace Summit stage. Cameras hovered. Media screamed questions, but they just held hands and smiled. A reporter finally asked, "So what do you call yourselves now?" Chris looked at Leona. She answered with a soft smile. Just, the first, end-of-series reflection for YouTube audience. They underestimated humans. Again. They thought we were weak, emotional, chaotic. They didn't know. Those were our strengths, and now, we've bonded with the stars. You messed with humans. Bad move.